she goes off after other lovers, and we already covered that, you know. But here we are. We covered that. So here we are in what did Gomer find when she went after her other lovers? I'll reread verse 7, and then we'll get into that a little bit more. And she said, and she shall follow after her lovers, but she shall not overtake them. And she shall seek them, but she shall not find them. Then shall she say, I will go and return to my first husband, for then was it better with me than now. Okay, so what did she find when she went after all these other lovers?
Grass wasn't greener.
The grass was greener. So she thought. A lot of S's. Sally, she sells seashells by the seashore. Okay, got that out of my system. Okay. But there also was a hedge around about the person leaving the Lord, trying to go after other lovers, trying to teach us about some other pleasures, be it bread, water, wool, be it drink, contentment, or pleasure. The hedge will prevent us from grasping what we think we want to replace God. Anything apart from God, it replaces God. So you may say to yourself, if I could just pursue that, even though I know it's wrong, but if I only had that, if I only watched that movie, even though it's not right, I know it would satisfy that little pleasure that I have. So just like us, or just like her, we too go after other false gods. We chase them. A lot of times we don't realize it. I'm not saying we get down, bow down and worship them, and whatnot. But without realizing it, things grasp our eye. Oh wow, if I only had that Lamborghini, I would be fulfilled. Right? If I only had that diamond watch, boy, I would look cool, wouldn't I? But those are fleeting moments. Those are other gods. There's no exception. But because there's a hedge around us, we find exactly what Gomer found. It won't work. God puts those hedges around us on purpose, so we don't go grasp them. There's hedges to protect. I think we covered this already, or I'm going to cover this. But there's hedges to protect us. Not just to keep us away from something that we want, but it actually protects us. When you look back at your life, I'm sure many of you can look back on your life. You can think right now, oh, these things I wish I had, back then. And then you say, oh, God, I'm glad you did not give me that. I could think of many things, Yeah, I remember many times in the military, I'd be someplace, oh, this is great, I'm doing good here. And then the military says, okay, you need to leave and go here. And then you look back and say, wow, God, I know why you made me move. Yep. Because what happened with the people that you were acquainted with at that time, they got in a lot of trouble, and you would have been a downfall with them. But in God's infinite wisdom, you were moved, so you didn't go down with them. So in addition to this being a warning, it can also provide comfort because we have friends. We have relatives or family doing what Gomer did, say, I am tired of walking with God. There's people that say that. I'm going to pursue the things of the world for a while. They'll find there is a hedge between them and what they are doing and hoping for. But what can we do? I already gave you the answer. What can we do when we find people that we know wandering away from God? We can pray for them. They're going down the wrong path, the path of vulnerability. You may even want to offer some advice. A lot of times people don't want the advice that you have to give. But a lot of times you should give it anyway. But remember, you have to do it in loving kindness. It really has to be sincere loving kindness when you offer advice that somebody they need, but they don't want. Right? And it's hard. But I'm sure, looking at this age group, excuse me the way I'm putting this, but we have a lot of wisdom here. We have a lot of wisdom. Where? Well, I would hope by the time you got to your age, you would have gathered some wisdom. Okay. So just keep in mind, you know, it really needs to be done in loving kindness. So verse 8. For she did not know that I gave her corn and wine and oil, and multiplied her silver and gold, which they prepared for Baal. Okay? So that's kind of, we're always out there longing for something. We're all born with a hole in our heart. I'm sure you guys heard this analogy. It kind of fits, I think, that's why I used it. You know, there's a God-sized hole in your heart that we need to fill with something, but we try to fill it with everything but God. That hole can only be filled by what? The only thing that can fill it is Jesus. Gomer is in all of us. We chase after the wind. We chase after the things that we think, I emphasize the word, we think will satisfy us. Trying to catch that golden ring, you know, as you go around the merry-go-round. Yeah, everybody here I'm sure knows what the merry-go-round is, you know, where you reach out and try to grab that golden ring. It was actually a brass ring. But the very thing Israel hopes to attain by sacrificing to Baal, God had already given her. So in this time in the story, Hosea, she thinks that all these lovers that she's chasing after is giving her all this stuff, but actually Hosea, her husband, is actually giving to keep her needed so she doesn't faint off and die. So as I was saying, the very thing Israel hoped to obtain by sacrificing to Baal, because remember, this is a picture of what Israel is doing with his relationship, with their relationship to God, with her relationship to God. Okay? God had already given to Israel. That shouldn't be surprising. All we have ever wanted is always in God's hands. Ask Peter, in John 21, 3 through 9, I'm going to paraphrase that. I go fishing, so Peter says, not realizing that the very thing he thought was in the hands of Jesus all along. Well, let's look at 2 Corinthians 9:8.
And God is able to make all grace abound toward you, that ye always having all sufficiency in all things may abound to every good work.
But what does that say? What does that really say? It says that God can do all things, right? Makes all grace abound towards you, having all sufficiency in all things. So if you're in God, He will take care of you. You just have to have faith and confidence. Don't try to do it on your own. I know many times we do that. We go, okay, God, I think I got this. So I go out and try to do it, you know, and then you go, oh, I messed up. I'm sorry, God. So you come back to God. Okay, and then He's taking care of it a little bit, and then you go, oh, I've got this. So you kind of leave God out for a little bit, and then God slaps you and gets you back in line again. You know, I'm sure you all have stories of that, right? And I think if you can't think of one story, you're either lying to yourself or you're asleep at the switch. Okay, I'm sorry. So let's see. So verses 9 and 10. Verses 9 and 10. Therefore, I will return and take away my corn in the time thereof, and my wine in the season thereof. And I will recover my wool and my flax given to cover her nakedness. And now I will discover her lewdness in the sight of her lovers, and none shall deliver her out of my hand. None shall deliver out of my hand. None can save her. None of Gomer's companions will be able to save her from the judgment of what would come upon her. None of your friends can save you from God's judgment. Only Jesus can. You need to turn to Jesus. In a large sense, the allies of Israel so eagerly trusted in their idols. She sacrificed, worshipped. Let's see, read what I wrote. In a large sense, the allies Israel so eagerly trusted in, the idols she so sacrificially worshipped, would prove powerless to save her. All these things that we put our trust in, that we think can help us in our times of need, all these wealth and riches that we hoard, they think they're going to satisfy our needs and save us from times to come. Only God can do that. We don't know what tomorrow may bring, but we do know who brings tomorrow, right? Gomer is mentioned 6 times in the King James Bible. I found this interesting. So who is Gomer? Do you remember what Gomer means? We covered that. The name Gomer means complete or bring to an end. So, like I said, Gomer is mentioned 6 times in the Bible. Let's take a look at it. I'm going to jump now. Let's take a look at Ezekiel 38, 1 through 7. Okay? I'll go ahead and read it because it's kind of off topic, but it's still on topic here. So Ezekiel 38, 1 through 7. And the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog in the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him. And say, Thus says the Lord God, Behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaw, and I will bring thee forth, and all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. Okay, this is the area of the land that he's talking about. You got Ross, Meshech, Tubal, Gomer, Togarmah, Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya. This is the area that they're talking about. Okay, Persia, Ethiopia, Libya, with all of them with shields and helmets. Gomer and all his bands, the house of Togarmah of the north quarters and his bands, and many people with thee. Be thou prepared, and prepare thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be a guard unto them. Okay, bring that because Gomer, in this case, represents Israel, and this is Gomer's coming down. Okay, these are the people that are turning their back on God, and God's calling them. Like I said, it's only mentioned 6 times in the whole King James Bible. I don't know about the other versions, but note the word guard. Come on, yeah. Note the word guard. So, what has Russia been in the Middle East? I'm sorry. What does guard mean in Hebrew? Does anybody know what guard means in Hebrew? This is the Hebrew word mishuma. It could mean having logistics responsibility or supplier. Okay, what does Russia do? We learned this in Bible prophecy. That's why I just learned this just not so long ago. I thought it was very interesting. Russia has been a supplier in the Middle East of arms. Okay, to all the areas around Israel to battle against Israel. So we're seeing Bible prophecy unfold before our very eyes. And the whole Bible is written with Bible prophecy that's happening in our eyes, before us today. We just need to be, and that's why I took a little. If this is interesting, I just realized this the other day. Gomer means to bring to completion. So the final battle that they're talking about, Gomer comes and it's going to bring a completion. This is the final battle that they're talking about. you know. And if you look back with Hosea, it's talking about the final one. God finally goes down and grabs Israel and brings Israel back to God. That's the final. I just found this so I mean, I get goosebumps just thinking about it right now. You know, we're witnessing God calling Israel back. You know, in the final days, just what's happening here in Hosea. It's prophesied right here in Hosea. God's going to do it. Okay. Yeah, these are just other notes that I have. Okay. So again, that's little Israel right there, with all these countries around that was mentioned in these verses. Okay? So let that sink in. And also, yes, Sue.
I thought you said that Gomer was Israel. You didn't say that.
No, I did. Well, Gomer represents what Israel's turning away. But he's also calling, Gomer is also it's a land where Israel, you know, they're taken. So God's calling all his people back out. Okay.
In Hosea, Gomer is Israel.
Yeah, in Hosea, Gomer is Israel. In Ezekiel, Gomer is actually the land. So you have to keep this stuff, it's hard to keep this stuff straight in your head. Yeah. Okay, back to Hosea. Okay, chapter 2, verse 11. And plenty of time. So, I will also cause her mirth to cease. I will also cause her mirth to cease her feast days, her new moon, her Sabbaths, and all her solemn feasts. Okay, that's verse 11. Mirth to cease. What does that mean? Come on, click.
She won't party anymore.
Say again.
She won't party anymore.
But what does mirth mean?
Happy.
Happy, joy. Happy, happy, joy, joy, happy. Right. Yeah. Gladness or rejoicing. Okay. And this is a stretch in the analogy, but what happened about a year ago with Israel? Man, her joy ceased. You know? So and it's going to get worse here in the tribulation too, so I don't think what happened the other day is it. So let's look at Isaiah 1:13 and 1 Kings 12:28 and 30.
First king.
Okay, go ahead.
So the king consulted and made 2 golden calves, and he said to them, "It is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Behold, your gods, O Israel, that brought you up from the land of Egypt." And he set one in Bethel, and the other he put in Dan. Do you want more?
Through 30, yes.
Okay. Now this thing became a sin, for the people went to worship before the one as far as Dan.
Okay, and then first Isaiah 1:13, please.
Bring your worthless offering no longer, because incense is an abomination to me. New moon and Sabbath are falling on the temple. I cannot endure iniquity and the solemn assembly.
So this is where Israel starts turning their back on God. Excuse me for the term, but whoring after other gods, going after other idols and whatnot. You know, going after idols, you know, the false gods. I didn't mean other idols. God is not an idol. The God of gods is not an idol. Okay, many scholars believe at this time Israel's feast days were celebrated not at the temple as God had intended, but at Dan and Bethel, where images of calves stood. No wonder then that God despised this corruption of his plan for his people and as these two verses suggested. Verse 12. And I will destroy her vines and her fig trees, whereof she has said, This is my reward, that my lovers have given me, and I will make them a forest, and the breast of the field, and the beast of the field shall eat them. Okay? So verse 12, vines and fig trees. The same representation is also seen in Isaiah 5:5.
Now please let me tell you what I will do to my vineyard. I will take away its hedge and it shall be burned, break down its walls, and it shall be trampled down.
Okay. God's going to take it away. All their things that think they satisfy them, God's going to take away. So I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself, but I gave you the answer anyway. What do the vines and fig trees represent?
Livelihood, survival.
The blessings of
Their
God.
livelihood, their income. God's going to take that all away. You know? So why does God destroy this? Why did God destroy their livelihood?
Bring them to their knees.
Bring them to their knees. Because Israel mistakenly attributed all these things to other false gods, to their own work. They attributed the fruits which God so graciously and constantly blessed her with to the hands of idols. Very much like secular world does today. They say, look at what our hands have wrought us. Look what we did. You know?
Israel is producing the food for Europe. Do you anticipate that all going away?
Do I anticipate all that going away right now? Yes, because I've read Revelation and Ezekiel, and it talks about that in the end times, where all these nations come against Israel. You know, but again, that happens during the tribulation. You know. Okay, following the Assyrian invasion of this time of Hosea, following the Assyrian invasion, vineyards and orchards would become overgrown and with fences destroyed or deteriorated. The wild animals would have a field day. So the problem is, even with us today, we say, look what our hands have done. Man, I got this job because of my own good works. Look what I did today. You know, look at that. Man, that grass is mowed just perfect. Right? I'm not saying you can't have a nice lawn, don't get me wrong there, but be careful what we put pride, false pride in. There are good things to be prideful of and prideful in. I have pride in my children, they're doing well. You know, but I should not be proud of that car that I drive, that golden watch that I have on my wrist. No, I don't have a golden watch. I don't think I've worn a watch since I was in the military because it's non-conducive to the battlefield. Anyway, that's another story. Verse 13. And I will visit upon her the days of Balaam, where she burned incense unto them, and she decked herself with earrings and her jewels, and she went after her lovers, and forgat me with the Lord, saith the Lord. Okay? So what happened here? I will visit upon her the days of Balaam. My question is, who is Balaam? Say again?
Evil one.
Evil one. Now, Balaam, let's see. Yeah. Balaam is not to be confused with Baal. Okay? They're kind of pronounced the same, but let's not confuse these. Okay? Do not confuse Balaam with Balaam. Okay? If that's in Numbers 22, who was the son of Beor and who was the non-Israel prophet who resides in Petro, near the Euphrates River. Balaam was known for his ability to pronounce effective blessings and curses. Balaam was sought by Balak to curse the Israelites. Balaam tried to curse the Israelites, but was stopped by an angel with a talking donkey. Okay, remember that? I'm just giving you a brief overview. When studied, you discover there are three important things to remember in the story of Balaam with the talking donkey. God sees your heart. God can see anything, or God can use anything to speak to you, and God will not be mocked. But back to Balaam, okay? They kind of sound like, I even got confused until I really delved deep, you know.
My version just uses B-A-A-L in all of these versions.
Okay.
So who's the good one and who's the bad one?
Balaam is in Numbers 22. He was a prophet. Balaam is not. Is bad.
Balaam is Baal.
Yeah, is Baal. Baal, just short. And I was getting there. So, but back to Balaam. Balaam is the plural word for Baal, which means Lord. So Balaam is many lords, many false lords, many false gods. Okay? So, as I said, Balaam is the plural of Baal, okay, which means Lord. So in general, Baal was the fertility god, lowercase g, who was believed to enable the earth to produce crops and enable people to produce children. Different regions worship Baal in different ways, and Baal proved to be a highly adaptable God. Okay? So my people forgot me, God says. The Lord declares, what would you do if your spouse forgot you and went after others? That's a serious question. I mean, God faces this with us every day.
Yeah.
But what would you do?
Cry.
If it was me, I would think, you know, if it was me, I would go ahead and just abandon her, leave her to go into God, whatever. But God is pursuing after her, as we will see. God pursues after her, just as he pursues after us, but in this case, he pursues after Israel. God's pursuing after Israel still to this day, because prophecy must be fulfilled. Verse 14. Verse 14. Therefore, behold, I will allure her and bring her into the wilderness and speak comfortably unto her. Now, there's a lot to unpack. I think I have 3 slides just on this one verse. Yes?
Mike, back to 13 there, I think it's very important that we realize that that happened in stages. It just wasn't a...
Correct.
They put Baal in secondary places next to Yahweh.
Yep.
And so they were actually disingenuous to God.
Right, right. And just as we do today, you know, I'm not saying we, but as the world, you know, individuals do today. They put things in place of God right next to houses of worship. I mean, I've seen a bar next to a church. You know. You know. The bar's no longer here, right? Okay. Some people caught the humor in that. Yes.
People want to sit on the fence and play either side.
Right.
But the fence belongs to Satan.
Yep. You know, you can't serve two.
No.
You make what is that verse?
There's 2 masters.
Not Jeremiah. Was it Jeremiah? Choose you now which day who you will serve.
Joshua.
Joshua. There we go. I knew it was a J. Choose who you will serve. So back to verse 14.
I learned a long time ago, you can't sit on the fence, because if you do, you're gonna get shot from both sides.
Oh, that's a good one. I never heard that analogy. You'll get shot from both sides.
Shot from both sides.
Okay, here is, like I said, there's a lot to unpack here in verse 14. And it's just a small verse. But the incomprehensible grace and mercy of God causes him to say, not, I will abandon her, but he says what? I will allure her.
You know, I find this very interesting that up until 14, he's punishing her. And then he turns around and allures her.
Well, I don't think he's really punishing her. I think he left her over to her own demise, so she realizes that what she's doing is wrong. Okay? Because I'm sure being a parent, you say, you know, kid, if you keep doing that, you're going to get hurt. So you stop him, and finally you say, okay, you just go ahead and touch that stove, then you'll really learn.
Yeah.
Right? That stove's hot. You know, but you gotta let them touch the stove sooner or later so they actually know what happens. You catch the analogy? Does that make sense?
Well, I think he was a little bit more forceful in his discipline.
You think God was too forceful in his discipline?
Not too forceful, more forceful than what you're giving him credit for.
Oh, I see. Okay, I got you. I was gonna say, there's that one thing that
In 1 Corinthians 5:5, it says, pray them into the hands of Satan that they may be saved. In the day of the Lord Jesus.
Yeah. So basically, turn them over to their own demise until they realize what's going on. But what was I going to say? Oh, yeah. There's one thing we have to remember when we're reading the Bible. If we ever have a problem with verses in the Bible, it's most likely one of two things. God knows a lot more than we do.
Amen.
And the other one, we just don't understand what God's trying to say. If we have an argument with something that's in the Bible, God's not wrong. We just have to figure out, change our paradigm, you know. Yes?
No, sitting here thinking, I don't think we can understand what this is all about, because our nature, our human nature would have said, the heck with you, lady, hit the road.
Hit the road, Jack.
You know, and God, you almost think as a weakness, but it's not a weakness. He's allowing us to go our own way to bring us back to where we should be.
Exactly. Exactly. You know. Yeah. Another good analogy, I don't know if anybody's ever dealt with a drug addict or a drunk or whatnot. You know, no matter what you say or do, you can't until they realize that, you know, they're in so deep they hit rock bottom, and the only place to go is up. And sometimes that's what God does to his people. The only way to go is to look up. You know, and say, oh God, you've been there all along. Thank you. You know, and again, totally off the subject here, but you guys remember those, that little poem or whatever it is, Footprints in the Sand? Remember that one? That would be a good one here. You know, we think, you know, this guy's walking along the beach. I'm going to paraphrase this, and since you all heard it. But he's walking along the beach and he says, you know, complaining to God about this, and that. You know, why haven't you been here when I'm having problems with this? Why haven't you been here when I'm, you know, he thinks he's all by himself. You know, and God says, I've been with you all along. You know, see where I walk beside you. But God, look, through my troubled times, there's only one set of footprints. You know, in my deepest times that I've needed your help, I only see one set of footprints. You abandoned me. And God says, no, my son, or my daughter, my child. Those are the times that I picked you up and I carried you through those deep times. You know, so God's there with us. And with that, it's almost time to quit. So I'm actually not going to get into the verse 14, but we'll pick up here next week.
You know, why would God want us any other way?
Say again?
I said, why would God want us any other way? He could force us, of course, make us do his will, make us. But why would he want us that way? He wants us of our own free will.
Yes, he wants us of our own free will. Yes, he could control us, but that's not God's way. So theoretically he could, but in reality he can't. because he gave us free will. So he has to lure us, let us figure out our own demise by ourselves. And some people get it, and unfortunately, which is really sad, some people don't get it. Because there's many lost souls out there. So that's where we should be on our guard to help guide them. No matter where we're at, we should be leading them to God. We see somebody in the checkout stand that's having a bad time. I'm sure you guys can think of many times where you just said a kind word and it just transformed that person's whole day. You may not realize that at the time, but maybe when you talk to them later, or if you see them later, it transferred their whole day. So with that, I'd like to close in prayer. Would anybody like to pray us out? If not, no? Okay, thank you, Heavenly Father, for bringing us together today. And I ask that these words that you have so graciously given us really lead us to a deeper understanding of you and how you are so indwelt in our life. You are so involved. And I know sometimes we don't understand how involved you are or we even see it. But please open up our eyes to those around us that are in need and help us give them strength and words. This we ask in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus the Christ. Amen.